My dad stared at the $12,000 bronze statue I made of his hero and said, "Real men don't make statues." Later, my sister Dana laughed about it too, at the party I paid for. I walked out. No more checks. No more family favors. I'm done. You'd think a custom bronze statue of General Patton, the man my dad's worshipped since before I could walk, would at least get a thank you. But nope, not from him. My name is Aiden Crawford. I'm 36. I live in a loft in downtown Kansas City, a 10-minute walk from the foundry where I do most of my sculpting. Bronze, clay, steel, whatever my hands can shape, I shape it. And apparently, none of it matters to the man who raised me. Dad turned 70 last weekend, and I figured, you know what? Let's do something big, something meaningful. So I commissioned a life-size statue of his favorite war hero, not some cheap novelty piece, either. We're talking polished bronze, detailed down to the creases in the man's coat. I even had the base inscribed with one of Patton's quotes. Courage is fear holding on a minute longer. I had it delivered to his backyard, under a tarp, just like we talked about. Thought I'd surprise him with it at the party. Well, surprise. He stood there with his arms crossed, frowning like someone just told him his car got towed. "What the hell is this?" he asked. I smiled, trying to keep it light. "It's Patton, bronze casting, your favorite quote, and everything. Happy birthday, Dad." He walked around at once, slow and silent. I figured maybe he was overwhelmed or something. Maybe he needed a second. But then he looked at me with that tired, disapproving squint he's mastered over the years. "You think this buys my respect?" I blinked. "Excuse me." He snorted and shook his head. "Statues, Aiden. Statues. You still think this artist crap means something? You waste all your talent making showpieces, and you think putting a dead general in my yard makes up for that?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "It's not about making up for anything. I thought you'd like it. Real men don't make statues. Real men fight wars. Let companies provide." I felt something twist in my chest. Not pain. Not exactly. Just exhaustion. That familiar, bone-deep weariness I'd felt since I was a teenager, trying to justify my passion to a man who never once picked up a chisel. I didn't say anything, just nodded, turned around, and walked back through the house without saying goodbye. The party was still going. My sister Dana was flirting with some guy in slacks, and Mom was fussing over the cake. I didn't stop to talk to either of them. I got in my truck and left. About 10 minutes into the drive home, I pulled over, just to breathe. My hands were still trembling from holding back what I really wanted to say. Because here's the thing, that statue, it cost me 12 grand out of pocket. I didn't bat an eye at the price because that's what I do. I give. Always have. You name it. New roof after the hailstorm. Medical bills when Mom broke her hip. Dana's private school tuition when she suddenly couldn't afford it. That money, mine. Every check I've written, every birthday I've paid for, every emergency covered without hesitation. And still, they laugh behind my back. Aiden, the dreamer. Aiden, the clay boy. Aiden, who thinks being an artist is a real job. I've sold sculptures to people in 6 countries. I've had my work in galleries in LA and Toronto, and every single time I tell them something I'm proud of, I get the same blank stare. Or worse, that patronizing smile like I'm 5 years old showing off a crayon drawing. But that day, standing in front of that statue, listening to my father call it artist crap, something inside me finally snapped into place. I wasn't going to keep doing this. Not another dime. Not another favor. Not another silent nod while they picked apart everything I built. I'm done. Let them find someone else to bail them out. Because I've got work to do, real work. And from now on, my hands are only building for people who respect what I create. A couple weeks later, against my better judgment, I showed up at Dana's anniversary party. Not because I wanted to. Honestly, I'd rather have spent the night elbow deep in clay. But I already RSVP'd, and besides, old habits die hard. The party was bigger than I expected. Dad must have invited half the town. White tents stretched across the backyard, fairy lights twinkling in the trees. There were even those little heaters buzzing away, even though the evening was already warm enough. Everything looked expensive, probably because it was. Paid for by yours truly. Funny thing was, nobody there seemed to remember that. I grabbed a Coke from the bar and tried to keep to myself. I was halfway through sipping it when I heard my mother's voice rise above the polite chatter. "I mean, bless his heart," she said, chuckling. "Aiden tries so hard, but sometimes I think his statues are better suited for garden gnomes than galleries." Laughter bubbled up around her. Real, loud laughter. I froze. My cup hovered midair. "She's not wrong," Dana added, her wine glass sloshing dangerously. She turned toward me, her cheeks flushed. "Hey, Aiden, you ever think about making little elves for people's front lawns? I hear they sell great at Walmart." More laughter. Bigger this time. I put the cup down before I crushed it in my hand. You know what's funny? That wine Dana was drinking. The whole spread laid out on those fancy tables. The tent rental, the heaters, even the damn paper lanterns. Every bit of it was on my card. Paid for weeks ago when Dana called crying about unexpected costs and how she didn't want to ruin the day with money stress. I stared at her, swaying slightly in her heels, poking fun at the same hands that built her party from scratch. Those hands, stained with clay, calloused from sculpting, the one she was laughing at. I clenched my jaw so tight it hurt. They didn't even notice me standing there. That's when it hit me. They never had. Not really. I took a step forward, feeling something burning low and slow in my chest. Hey, I said, loud enough to cut through the laughter. The group turned, faces still frozen in grins. For a second, nobody said anything. I cleared my throat. You're welcome, by the way. Dana frowned. For what? For this? I said, gesturing around the backyard. The tents, the caterers, the heaters, your dress, Mom's flowers, all of it. The smile slipped. A couple guests glanced around awkwardly, suddenly realizing maybe they'd missed something. I footed the whole bill. I continued, my voice steady. Because Dana said it was too important to cancel. Dana opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Well, you didn't have to throw it in everyone's face. No, I said. Funny, you had no problem throwing my career in mine. Mom stepped forward, her hand fluttering uselessly in the air. Now, sweetheart, you're making a scene. No, Mom, I said. You made a scene when you stood up in front of your friends and joked that I should be selling gnomes. A few people shifted uncomfortably, pretending to admire the lanterns, the table centerpieces, anything but the fight unfolding in front of them. I looked at Dana. Her face was flushed now, but not from the wine. I smiled tightly. Here's the good news. This is the last party you'll ever have to thank me for. What's that supposed to mean? Dana snapped. It means, I said, stepping back and feeling lighter with every word, I'm done. No more checks. No more last-minute favors. No more wiring money because you forgot about the catering deposit. I turned to the guests, most of whom were now pretending to look at their phones. Enjoy the party, I said. It's on me, literally, because it's the last one you'll ever get. I dropped the half-empty Coke onto the nearest table, turned on my heel, and walked out through the gate. Behind me, the music stuttered. The laughter died completely. For the first time in my life, I wasn't angry. I was free. The first thing I noticed after walking out of that party was how quiet it got. Not just that night, the days after too. No calls. No texts, no passive-aggressive Facebook posts about family loyalty or how grateful kids used to be. It was like I never existed. At first, I told myself it was a good thing. Peace and quiet. No one asking for money. No one slipping a small favor into casual conversation. No Dana acting like I owed her the world just because we shared DNA. But around day 3, the silence started to shift. It wasn't peace anymore. It was static, the kind that hums low in your ears and makes you clench your jaw without realizing. On day 4, the first message came through. Mom, of course. Mom, hi honey, hope you're well. The gas bill didn't get paid, and they're threatening to shut it off. Could you please handle it like you always do? I'm just so stressed right now. No apology. No, I'm sorry we made fun of you in front of 30 people. Just a straight pipeline back to business as usual. I stared at the text for a long time. I even typed out a reply, something biting, something final, but I deleted it. They didn't deserve an explanation. 5 hours later, Dana called. I let it ring out. Then she texted, Dana, it's freezing in here. Thanks a lot, Aiden. Real mature to punish your family because your little feelings got hurt. You're so selfish, it's unbelievable. Selfish. I actually laughed out loud at that one. Scared the hell out of the dog walking by my building. That's what it boiled down to, huh? 5 years of rent payments, emergency dental bills, down payments for cars and classes and backyard parties. And the second I stopped, I was selfish. The next morning, another text from Mom. Mom, Aiden, the electric bill is overdue too. Please don't let your father sit in the dark. He's not well. Be better than this. Be better. The guilt was like a slow leak in my chest. That old, familiar tug. You're a bad son. You're a bad brother. Family helps family. Except it wasn't help. It never had been. It was expectation, obligation, a transaction where I gave, and they took and laughed and took some more. So I replied, simple, final, me. You're all capable of living without me. Time to prove it. I hit send and turned my phone off for the rest of the day. That night, when I finally switched it back on, there were no new messages. Just that static hum in my head, louder than before. But underneath it, something else was building too, something steady, something solid. It was called peace. Real peace this time, and I wasn't about to give it up. By the end of the week, the silence cracked wide open. First, it was Aunt May. She called while I was cleaning my studio, her name flashing on my phone like some flashing neon sign I didn't want to read. I almost didn't answer. Should have trusted my gut. The second I picked up, she launched straight in. Aiden, honey, you need to come to your senses. Your mother's a wreck. Your father's on the brink of losing the house. You want that on your conscience? No hello. No how are you? Just guilt, wrapped up in a bow. I braced the phone between my shoulder and ear, wiping bronze dust off my palms with a rag. They'll be fine, Aunt May. They're adults. They'll figure it out. You always were the stubborn one, she said, with that little cluck of her tongue she used whenever I didn't jump the way they wanted. It's not about stubbornness, sweetheart. It's about family. Family sticks together. Family doesn't treat each other like ATMs, I said, voice even. There was a beat of silence on the line, like she didn't know how to respond to that. Then, predictably, she pivoted. Well, think about your poor father. His health's declining. Stress isn't good for a man his age. Dana told me he hasn't slept in days worrying about bills. You're killing him, Aiden. I closed my eyes and counted to 5. That was their game, always had been. Guilt first, then blame. Bait the hook with tears, reel you in with anger. I'm not killing anyone, I said. If he's stressed, maybe you should have thought about that before depending on me for every penny. You ungrateful little, she started, but I hung up before she could finish. The calls didn't stop there. Old family friends started chiming in. Texts from numbers I didn't even recognize popped up. Hey, heard your family's struggling. Maybe reach out? Blood is blood. You're being kind of heartless, man. They're your parents. One even said, if you don't help them, who will? They gave you everything. Everything? A roof over my head until I could get 2 part-time jobs and move out. A hot plate for dinner while Dad drank in front of the TV and Mom smiled through gritted teeth. Years of being told my art was a cute hobby, while they cashed every check I sent them without hesitation. Yeah, everything. The worst was when someone from the gallery, a colleague I barely even spoke to, texted out of the blue. Your mom reached out. Sounds like she's really hurt. Don't let pride ruin your family. That one hurt. Not because it was true, but because it showed just how far they were willing to go, dragging strangers into it, making me look like the villain to anyone who'd listen. I blocked number after number, phone buzzing with new calls even faster than I could swipe. Finally, I threw the phone onto my workbench and grabbed a block of clay, shoved my hands into it, kneaded and pounded and shaped until the shaking in my hands turned into something real. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I was awake. For the first time in my life, I could see the whole machine clearly, not just my parents, not just Dana, but the whole twisted system of extended family built on guilt and obligation. A pyramid scheme of emotional blackmail. And I wasn't playing anymore. They don't want you, I muttered to myself, shaping the clay under my palms. Just your money. And they could find someone else to bleed dry. Because I was done. I should have known it wouldn't end with phone calls. When Dana showed up at my studio, it wasn't some quiet, emotional ambush. No, she came in hot, throwing open the door so hard it slammed against the wall. She didn't even look around at the sculptures, the work tables, the half-finished pieces scattered like memories. Her eyes locked onto me, furious, bloodshot, wild. You're killing him, she shouted. Before I could even open my mouth, I set down my tools carefully, wiping my hands on a rag. Hi, Dana. Nice to see you too. Don't start with your passive-aggressive crap, she barked, stepping closer. Dad's in the hospital. His blood pressure's through the roof. And it's your fault. I stared at her, feeling a strange sort of calm settle over me. It was like watching a tornado tear through a field you no longer lived on. What happened to Dad is because of a lifetime of bad choices, I said evenly. Not because I stopped playing your personal bank. Her mouth dropped open like I had slapped her. You're heartless, she hissed. He's sick, Aiden, and Mom's a wreck. She's crying all day. They could lose the house. They should have thought about that when they decided to live off me instead of planning for their own futures. I cut in, my voice cold enough to frost the windows. Her fists clenched at her sides. She was trembling, whether from rage or desperation, I couldn't tell. This isn't about money anymore, she snapped. It's about family. You're tearing us apart. I shook my head slowly. No, Dana. You tore us apart the moment you decided my only value was how much I could give. She stepped back like I had punched her, but her mouth twisted almost immediately into something harder, uglier. You'll regret this, she said, low and shaking. You think you're better than us now, but family has a way of getting even. I raised an eyebrow. Was that a threat? She didn't answer, just stared at me, breathing hard, chest rising and falling like she was trying to summon something, anger, maybe, or courage. You'll see, she muttered finally, turning on her heel. She yanked the door open, slamming it so hard behind her the walls shuddered. I stood there for a long moment, hands still, heart steady. If this had happened even 6 months ago, I would have caved. Called Mom, sent Dana a check, shown up at the hospital with flowers and guilt stitched into my skin. But not this time, not anymore. They had mistaken kindness for weakness for too long. I picked up the piece I had been working on, a rough clay figure, half-formed, hunched against a silent wind only it could feel. Slowly, carefully, I went back to work. Because no matter what storms they tried to send my way, I wasn't part of their collapsing house anymore. I was building something better, something mine. It didn't take long for Dana's threat to show its teeth. About a week after she stormed out of my studio, I got a call from Jenna, my assistant at the gallery. You might want to check Facebook, she said, her voice tight. It's about you. I pulled out my phone, half expecting some dumb family spat posted for the whole world to see. But even knowing how low they could go didn't prepare me for what I saw. There it was, at the top of my feed, a long, weepy post from my mother's account. It breaks my heart to share this, but sometimes the children you raise with love turn their backs when you need them most. Some people would rather see their elderly parents suffer than lift a finger. Please pray for us during this heartbreaking time. There were no names mentioned, no specific accusations, but it didn't have to be spelled out. Everyone who knew us, everyone who had been at Dana's party, everyone who'd heard the whispers, they knew exactly who she was talking about. Within hours, the post had hundreds of likes, comments full of sympathy, prayers, virtual hugs. Old neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years chimed in, talking about how sad it is when family forgets their roots and how money changes people. The real kicker? Some of my clients saw it too. By evening, I had 3 concerned emails asking if I was okay, if there was anything going on at home that might affect my commissions. Because that's what it always came back to: appearances. Control the narrative. Make me the villain so they could stay the victims. I sat at my work table, staring at the screen for a long time, feeling nothing. No rage, no shame, no sick pit in my stomach, just a strange, steady clarity. When Jenna peeked into the office later, she looked nervous. You okay? I shrugged, putting my phone down. Art's controversial. Even family can become a performance. She blinked at me, probably expecting a meltdown, maybe even a rant, but I didn't give it to her. I wouldn't give them anything. That was the power they wanted, the reaction, the scandal, the apology they could wave like a trophy. They weren't going to get it. Instead, I pulled on my apron, grabbed a slab of clay, and started something new. Something for me this time. No commissions, no exhibitions, just my hands shaping something honest. As I worked, the noise from the outside world faded. The comments, the pity, the sideways glances, they couldn't reach me here. In here, it was just creation, just truth, and no Facebook post could touch that. I thought the Facebook smear was the worst of it. I was wrong. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon, while I was up to my elbows in wet clay. My phone buzzed on the workbench. I almost ignored it, but something about the timing made me wipe my hands and check. Bank alert. Suspicious activity detected. I frowned, swiping it open. There it was clear as day. Loan application submitted. Applicant, Aiden Crawford. Except I hadn't applied for anything. My chest tightened as I scrolled further. It wasn't just any loan. It was a massive business loan. The kind that could tie up my studio, my accounts, everything I owned, and it had my name on it. Panic flared in my gut. I called the bank immediately. It didn't take long to get the details. Someone had submitted forged documents, fake pay stubs, falsified statements, using my personal information, my social security number, my signature, even, and the address listed? My parents' house. It hit me all at once, hard enough that I had to sit down. I didn't want to believe it. Some stupid, stubborn part of me still wanted to think there was a mistake, a misunderstanding, but deep down, I already knew the truth. I called my mother. She answered on the third ring, her voice fake cheerful. Aiden, honey, I was just thinking about you. How long were you planning to keep lying to me? I cut in, my voice low. Silence. Aiden, I don't know what the loan application, the forged documents. You used my name to try and save your damn house, didn't you? Still silence. Then, finally, a broken sob. We didn't have a choice, sweetheart. We were desperate. You weren't helping anymore, and you committed fraud, I said, cold enough to make my own skin prickle. You forged my name. You tried to steal my future because you couldn't manage your own past. Aiden, please. It's not like that. We were going to pay it back. We just need it. I hung up. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone across the room. I didn't do anything except sit there, staring at the wall, letting the final fracture settle deep into my bones. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about survival. I drove straight to the police station, filed a report, met with a detective, turned over every piece of evidence I had, the bank statements, the emails, even old texts that showed how comfortable they were treating my name like their property. It wasn't even hard to prove. The paper trail was sloppy, desperate. They thought I wouldn't fight back, that I'd fold like I always had. They were wrong. By the end of the month, formal charges were filed. The bank seized assets tied to the fraudulent loan, including their house. Eviction followed fast. My parents, once smug and cozy in their 3-bedroom ranch, moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment across town. No more backyard parties. No more heated tents. No more catered family celebrations paid for by the son that loved to humiliate. I didn't go visit. I didn't call. I didn't owe them anything. For the first time in my life, I finally understood something Dad used to preach all the time, though he never really lived it. Actions have consequences. And for once, it wasn't me paying the bill. It happened a few weeks after the eviction. I was walking back to my studio from the coffee shop down the street, a fresh cup in one hand, keys in the other, when I saw her, Dana, standing outside the building. She looked rough, hair messy, dark circles under her eyes, her designer bag slung over one shoulder like it weighed 100 pounds. For a second, she just stood there, like she wasn't sure if she should come closer. Then she did. Aiden, she said, her voice cracking a little. Can we talk? I didn't answer, just unlocked the door and pushed it open. If she wanted to talk, she could follow. She did. Inside, the studio smelled like clay and metal, like work and sweat and building things with your own 2 hands. Dana flinched, maybe from the sharpness of it, or maybe just from being somewhere she never actually belonged. She wrung her hands together, searching for the right angle. Look, I know things got out of control, she started, voice soft, practiced. I know, we made mistakes, but Mom and Dad, they're not young anymore. They can't live like this. It's too much. I set my coffee down on the workbench and crossed my arms. They're not young, but they're not helpless either. She shook her head quickly. You don't understand. Dad's blood pressure's worse. Mom's depressed. They don't have savings. Aiden, they're lost without you. I raised an eyebrow. Maybe they should have thought about that before they decided I wasn't part of the family, except when it was time to pay the bills. Dana's face twisted like she'd just bitten into something sour. She took a step forward. Please, she said, desperate now. We need you. I let the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. Then I said, calm and final, you don't need me. You needed a crutch. And now, for the first time in your lives, you're facing the world without one. Her mouth opened, like she had something clever ready to fire back. But nothing came out. For the first time, maybe ever, Dana was speechless. I grabbed a lump of fresh clay from the table and started kneading it between my hands. dismissing her without another word. When she realized I wasn't going to say anything else, she turned and left quietly this time. No door slamming, no screaming, just the hollow sound of her heels fading down the hallway. I didn't watch her leave. I had better things to build. It came in on a Sunday morning. I was at the studio early, apron already dusted with clay, when my personal email pinged. An anonymous address. No subject line, just a link. I almost deleted it without looking, but curiosity won. It was another post, another public cry for sympathy from my parents. Same game, different day. The words blurred together. Abandoned, betrayal, our son who turned his back when we needed him most. They never used my name, of course. Just enough hints to let everyone know exactly who they meant. I stared at the screen for maybe 5 seconds. Then I smiled. Not a bitter smile. Not the kind that masks anger or sadness. A real one. The first real one in a long time. I didn't even open the full post. I just clicked out of it, shut my laptop, and turned back to the clay block waiting on the workbench. Across the room, Jenna was setting up a new sculpture stand. She looked up, catching the small grin still tugging at the corner of my mouth. "You okay?" she asked. I wiped my hands on my apron and nodded. "I'm free." Simple as that. I wasn't their scapegoat anymore. I wasn't their wallet, or their punching bag, or their excuse for everything that went wrong in their lives. I was Aiden Crawford, a sculptor, a man who built things, real things, with his own hands. And this time, I wasn't building anyone else's dreams but mine. Outside, the early spring sun spilled through the windows, catching the dust in the air, turning it gold. I picked up my carving tools, turned to the lump of clay, and smiled again. There was work to do. Good, honest work. And for the first time, it was mine and mine alone.